ExpressLRS. It's the new high-performance, long-distance, low latency, super inexpensive open source control link. And the last time we talked about it, I told you the easiest way to get into ExpressLRS was to flash it to your FreeSky R9 module. But that's not true anymore. Now, the easiest way to get into ExpressLRS is to purchase a pre-flashed and ready-to-go receiver. What a novel concept! Instead of having to solder up your own module and receiver, or maybe buy some third-party hardware and go through a rigorous or onerous flashing process, you could just buy a receiver, ready to go, solder it up, flash it, you don't have to, and fly it. And that's what we're going to talk about in this video today. ExpressLRS 2.4 gigahertz receiver and module made by HappyModel. I'm Joshua Bardwell, and you're going to learn something today. The ExpressLRS modules and receivers that you see me working with in this video were purchased by me with my own money from FatboyFPV. However, after he saw my name on the order, he spontaneously refunded the payment and said this one's on me. So if you're a stickler about that kind of thing, I guess you could consider this a sponsored video. You may have heard of ExpressLRS before, and you may even have played with ExpressLRS 900 megahertz, but ExpressLRS 2.4 gigahertz is the wave of the future. That is what everybody who is into ExpressLRS says. And that's kind of what people who aren't into ExpressLRS say as well. Crossfire, 900 megahertz. TBS Tracer, 2.4 gigahertz. And TBS has said that's the direction people are going, just you wait and see. Immersion RC Ghost, 2.4 gigahertz. They don't even have a 900 megahertz version. They didn't even bother. Why 2.4 gigahertz over 900 megahertz? It's true that 900 megahertz can have better range, and for those who want ultimate long range, 900 megahertz will remain the standard. But 2.4 gigahertz is more than capable of giving all the range a typical pilot could ever need, even a long range pilot. There have been range tests getting Immersion RC Ghost and ExpressLRS out to 20, 30, 40 kilometers or maybe more. They can go further than most people are going to need to go. And 2.4 gigahertz has certain advantages. It's a much wider frequency band, which means you can have more pilots in the air using telemetry, using low latency and high packet rates without any interference. It is also a global frequency band, whereas 900 megahertz in Europe, for example, it's much smaller frequency band compared to the rest of the world. So 2.4 gigahertz has some other advantages. And the other one is 2.4 gigahertz, they can run at up to 500 hertz update rate for the lowest possible latency. And that's something that so far nobody has managed to do over in 900 megahertz. Might not even really be possible, given the technical constraints. This is an ExpressLRS receiver. That's the whole thing. For comparison, here is a FreeSky R9 receiver, and here is a TBS Tracer receiver. Now, the small size of this receiver isn't specifically because it's using 2.4 gigahertz versus 900 megahertz. I just wanted to show you those receivers side by side and show you how freaking small ExpressLRS was making their receiver. In fact, one of the ways they get it so small is that they use this integrated ceramic, see this thing right here, this little tower? That is the antenna. There is no additional antenna needed for this specific receiver. There are some ExpressLRS receivers with a standard antenna connector, and they do have a little better range than this one, but there's times when you'll trade weight and compactness for range, and that's where this receiver is designed for. Well, now you're convinced that 2.4 gigahertz ExpressLRS is where you want to be, and you've purchased some receivers and a module, and you're ready to get it set up, and that's what this video is all about. And we're going to start with the HappyModel ExpressLRS module. This is potentially the most exciting thing. Oh, I don't know, it's all pretty exciting, but it's really exciting that you can get into a module like this. This is the 2.4 gigahertz module, which previously you either had to build yourself or you had to convert an Immersion RC Ghost module, which was a little problematic. Not the least of which it was expensive. This is much, much less expensive. By the way, links in the video description to places where you can buy this stuff. And it's always kind of been questionable. Well, you know, when you're flashing it onto somebody else's hardware, will it continue to work in the long term? This is dedicated hardware. I've just noticed here that some of the screws have these wide, flat heads, and some don't. I think the wide, flat heads are used to hold the board in place inside the module, and the ones without the wide flat heads are used for closing the module up. We've got our screws inserted, 1, 2, 3, 4. Great. Next I'm going to take the back cover and install this pigtail. And I am going to use this wrench to tighten this down. If you do this, be very careful. You can easily over tighten, over torque, and damage the threads of the SMA. But I am going to use this wrench because it will let me kind of crush that split washer as needs to be. It would be really nice if this mold had some kind of a cup here to help prevent this nut from spinning. The way it is now, if you crank down on your antenna and tighten your antenna, this will just twist. Well, it's fairly... Let's try it. If I crank down on my antenna... Oh, I've tightened it down enough, it's not twisting. If this loosens up, this can just twist and it'll break off this connector inside here. So, suggestion for a future design of this piece. We're going to pop on this UFL connector here. If we wanted to be extra special, we could put a little bit of hot glue on there to help hold it in place. Yes. And we'll use the non-washer flathead wide head screws here to close it up. We're ready to go. The next thing you're probably expecting to see is how to wire up the receiver, how to bind it, how to set up the flight controller, and then just go fly. And ExpressLRS can be that simple, but if you're getting into ExpressLRS, you probably want to be keeping up with the latest. And that means you're going to need to know how to flash the firmware to the module and the receiver, so when new firmware comes out, you can take advantage of it. So let's go ahead through the whole process. And if you previously watched my tutorial about how to flash ExpressLRS to a FreeSky R9 receiver, you're still going to want to stick around for this one because, number one, a couple of the steps you can skip because this hardware comes pre-flashed and ready to go. And we're also going to go over how to flash this module and the receiver using Wi-Fi. This particular module and receiver has Wi-Fi on board, so you don't actually need to use it's a really quick and easy way to flash it. Let's get into it. Okay, next, you need to be running a version of OpenTX that supports ExpressLRS. If you are running OpenTX 2.3.11 or newer, if you are running EdgeTX, what's EdgeTX? It's a new version, it's a new fork of OpenTX. Kind of like Betaflight came along and had all these new exciting things when CleanFlight was a little bit slower to develop. I got a video coming out about EdgeTX and how you can get in on it if you want to. But if you're already using EdgeTX, you're good to go. And if you want the absolute latest and greatest in features, ExpressLRS has a nightly build, which you can download of OpenTX. The main thing at this time of recording is that if you want to use the 500 Hertz update rates, OpenTX supports that, but it actually only pulls the sticks at 250 Hertz. So you're getting 500 Hertz updates, but you're not really getting 500 Hertz sampling. In order to get the true 500 Hertz updates, you need the nightly ExpressLRS build. I've got OpenTX 2.3.12 in this radio, and for the time being, I'm just going to stick with that in order to keep this video from getting much longer than it needs to be. There's a link in the video description to the nightly build. If you want to download and flash that, you can go ahead and do that. Next, we're going to go to this page in the ExpressLRS wiki, link down in the video description below, of course. We're going to download the ExpressLRS configurator, which we're going to use to compile and set up an ExpressLRS. And I need to do that even though I've already got ExpressLRS configurator installed because I have to update to the latest version. So we will download ExpressLRS configurator setup 053. That's for Windows. And we'll download and run that. Here in the configurator, I'm going to choose the release version that I want to use, and it's a good idea to go ahead and flash the receiver and the module with the latest firmware at the time that you get it. They are usable out of the box, but you never know what's changed since the time that they were flashed. So at the time of this release, it is 100 RC8 is the latest, and for target, we're going to go down and we're going to find the HappyModel 2.4 gigahertz. And the specific receiver that we've got here is the EP2 receiver. There are three types of receiver that you could have gotten if you got the HappyModel. It is the EP, the ES, or the PP. The EP and the ES both have Wi-Fi, which is what we're going to use to flash them. The PP, sorry, I'm still a child internally. The PP has to be flashed via pass-through, which I showed in my FreeSky R9 video. And you can check that if you've got that happens to be the receiver you've got. Basically, don't buy the PP. Don't buy the... Just buy the EP or the ES. The PP is... I got to stop saying it. I can't help it. So we're going to choose, this is the EP2, we're going to choose EP 2400 receiver via Wi-Fi. The firmware that you flash also depends on how you plan to flash it. If you plan to flash it via using pass-through or some other method, you would need to select that, but Wi-Fi is the one that you want. As far as device options go, the defaults should work for most everybody. There's only one regulatory domain for 2.4 gigahertz as far as I know. You're going to want to put your own binding phrase. This is kind of like your Wi-Fi password. And basically, when you flash your module and you flash your receiver, if they have the same binding phrase, they'll automatically be bound. There's no need to, there isn't even a bind button on the receiver, although there is a secret way you can put it into binding mode if you really need to. It's not secret, but you're going to put your binding phrase in. I'm going to make it whatever it is, and you can enable performance options like, for example, use 500 hertz to get the high refresh rate. If you're using one of the OpenTX nightly builds, it'll be supported. I'm not, so I'm going to go ahead and leave that off for now. I would like to use telemetry and have full-fledged telemetry, which ExpressLRS by default gives up most. It only has the simplest telemetry in order to get the fastest update rates. But I'm going to go ahead and enable telemetry. And we'll play with that, and we are going to build but not flash. Now, if this is the very first time you've done this, the build will fail and the ExpressLRS configurator will download some other things that it needs. That'll only happen the first time, and it may take 5 or 10 minutes for the first failed build to actually finish. Once that's done, you'll just go back in and hit build again, and it'll take 2 or 3 minutes and then be fine. And when that's all done, it will pop up this folder, which highlights this firmware.bin file. That is the file that we're eventually going to use when we flash the receiver. But let's set that aside for the moment. That's the receiver. We are going to choose our module. And the module we've got is the HappyModel ES24TX 2400 via Wi-Fi. So now we've got the TX. We're going to leave all the options the same. The options need to be the same between the module and the receiver, or they may not work correctly. And we're going to go ahead and build. All right, that's done. Next, what we need to do is click this link, which became available when we selected the transmitter target. We're going to download the Lua Script, and we're going to save that. Aha! We're going to plug in our radio, and we're going to save that to the SD card on the radio. Plug in USB, USB storage. And now this USB drive becomes available, which is our SD card contents on our radio. We're going to put that into, I'm pretty sure you put it into scripts /tools. That's almost always where you put those things. Let's see if that works. I'm going to unplug the radio, and I'm going to long press the sys key. Should take me to tools, and there's ExpressLRS, and it is running. Perfect. Doing good so far. Next, I'm going to install the module in the module bay. Make sure your antenna is plugged in. And then I'm going to long press the model key, and I'm going to go down to external module. There we go, external RF. I'm going to set that, no, external. I'm going to set that to Crossfire. There we go. Why are we using Crossfire? Crossfire is a wire protocol that's used to talk to the module, the receiver, and the flight controller, as well as an air protocol, which is what the Crossfire module talks to the Crossfire receiver wirelessly. ExpressLRS doesn't use Crossfire air protocol, it uses ExpressLRS. But the wire protocol, internal to the radio and the flight controller, they just use Crossfire, because why reinvent the wheel? Having done that, we should see that the module is powered up. And then, if we long press the sys key and go down and run the ExpressLRS Lua script, we should see, yay, version mismatch. And what I'm going to do is actually create a folder in my OneDrive, and I'm going to put these on my phone for a reason which will become apparent in a moment. We're going to take this folder name here. We're going to copy that. We're going to drag firmware.bin over, and we're going to rename it. There we go. HappyModel EP2 RX via Wi-Fi. And then we're going to take the TX, and we're going to drag that over. And likewise, we're going to copy that file name or that folder name. And we're going to rename that one. And there's my two firmwares up on my OneDrive. Next, I'm going to go into my OneDrive on my phone, RC Utilities, ELRS firmware, and I'm going to download both of these files to my phone. And the reason I'm doing this is because now that I have them on my phone, I can flash view. If I end up in the field with a receiver on my quad and I forgot to update the receiver or something, I can easily just flash them via Wi-Fi straight from my phone. So let's flash the module first. Here we are in the ExpressLRS Lua Script, and I'm just going to go down to Wi-Fi Update and click. And we can see here it says go to HTTP 10.0.0.1. And here on my phone, I'm going to go to the Wi-Fi. And I'm going to look for a wireless network, which I should see a new Wi-Fi. There it is, ExpressLRS TX module. The password is ExpressLRS. We don't need to auto reconnect and connect. We will just choose to stay connected here. Connected without internet, okay? Then we're going to bring up the web browser, and we're going to go to that address 10.0.0.1. Hey, welcome to your ExpressLRS update page. Okay, fine. We're going to choose file. We're going to go to files. And we're going to choose the TX, not the RX. And we're going to update. To update the firmware on the receiver, we're going to need to power it up. And so it'll be easiest to go ahead and solder it up to the flight controller before we do that. The wiring diagram is pretty simple. It's the same as Crossfire, if you've ever done a Crossfire receiver. From one side to the other, you've got ground, 5 volts, TX, and RX. And the TX on the receiver is going to go to the RX on the flight controller. The RX on the receiver is going to go to the TX on the flight controller. The other thing to keep in mind, and this is super annoying, that the pads on the receiver are not labeled. So make sure you're looking at the side of the receiver with the chip and not the side of the receiver with the antenna when you go from left to right, ground, VCC, TX, RX. Also bear in mind the ground pad has this extra little pad here next to it. Don't wire it up backwards, or you'll put VCC 5 volts somewhere where it shouldn't be and potentially damage the receiver. So go ahead and wire that up to your flight controller and get it so it powers on. We'll come back and we'll do the final configuration of Betaflight to get it actually working in just a minute. Now I've just powered up my receiver using a bench supply because I haven't soldered it to the flight controller yet. And you can see it starts with a slow blinking LED, and then after 20 seconds is the default. You can change the timeout when you create the firmware. But the default is 20 seconds. It will time out and begin to fast flash, and that means it has entered Wi-Fi flashing mode. And here we've got ExpressLRS RX. Password is the same, ExpressLRS. We will not auto reconnect, we'll just connect. And we'll go here, and once again, we will go to 10.0.0.1. Same deal, choose file. This time we're going to choose the RX file, and we'll click Update. And it'll redirect to 10.0.0.1/update, and then that should be done. One other note, after you have finished uploading the firmware via Wi-Fi, the receiver needs a few seconds to actually load the firmware and do its little internal flash. If you power the receiver down before it's done this, it will be bricked and you'll need to flash it via an FTDI adapter, which you would probably rather avoid that. So always give the receiver a few seconds after the upload to finish flashing itself, and then everything will be fine. Now at this point, both the module and the receiver have been flashed, and that should mean, because they were flashed with the same binding phrase, it should mean as soon as I power up, oh, we're gonna need to power cycle that again. It went into Wi-Fi mode. It should mean that as soon as they power up, we will get bind. Let's go into the ExpressLRS Lua Script and check. Power up the receiver. Solid LED. It's working. It's working, baby. The final step then is going to be set up your flight controller, and it's going to be essentially the same as a TBS Crossfire setup if you know how to do that. You're going to go to the Ports tab, and for whichever UART you connected the TX and RX wires to, you're going to enable Serial RX for that UART. Then in the configuration tab, you're going to set serial-based receiver, and provider is going to be Crossfire. And that should do it. At that point, you should have movement in your receiver tab and be ready to do whatever else you need to do. There is a lot more to know about ExpressLRS than just this. This is just the very beginning, and development of ExpressLRS is extremely fast moving. New stuff is being done all the time. If you're going to use ExpressLRS, I highly recommend that you join the ExpressLRS Discord server. The folks there are super helpful. That is where all the developers who are actually making it happen live, and where a whole bunch of other helpful people are who are users who are experienced. I hate to say it, but ExpressLRS is just not a set it and forget it technology. You could do that, but you would be missing out on so much because it just keeps getting better and better. So yeah, definitely link to the Discord down in the video description below, as well as links to the products that I'm using. Yes, they are affiliate links too. Want to get into ExpressLRS? You want to try it out? Click that affiliate link, make any purchase. I get credit for any purchase you make after you click that link. You don't have to, you can buy ExpressLRS, you buy a whole bunch of other stuff too. I get a small commission if you do that. It costs you nothing, and it's an easy way for you to help support the channel. Thank you so much for watching. That's going to do it for this one. Happy flying. You guys, I don't know where I am, and I don't know what's going to happen, but if I don't make it out of this, I just want to know that you subscribe to my channel, or maybe join my Patreon, or click one of these videos I picked out for you.